This video shows how to assemble the Kiwitech stock rod. When you receive the stock rod, likely to be in two parts. Assembly 1 contains the gearbox, 4:1 ratio, the spool wound with 100 meters of Kiwitech polywire, the chassis, and onto the chassis a collet, which is this black nylon piece here. Then we have the rod itself, fiberglass with a handle, again attached onto a collet. 3 pedals fixed with wedges, and the aluminium lure. If we push that middle pedal away, we can release the lure, and we see on the bottom of the lure we've got a drilled hole, countersunk, and one at the bottom, and that's where we attach our polywire to. So we'll leave the lure out of the way for the moment, and first we'll look at attaching the rod into assembly 1. What we see on the rod handle, we've got a second hole, so we're going to slide the chassis through that hole. Okay, and what we look to do is tap the chassis down onto the handle. That's easiest. We have something to rest the handle on first. I can push down firmly to start with. So I can tap using a hammer. Alternatively, using my block of wood, looking to make sure the collets are about even. And then what I want to do now is looking down my assembly, ensure that my pedals at the end of the rod are lined up with the middle of the spool. So I'll just twist these into place for us. So you should be able to just twist those pedal assemblies on the shaft, just using your hand. So they now line up, looking down the rod. They line up again with the centre of the spool. I'm now going to take my polywire, thread it up through the first pedal, into my lure, starting from the bottom. And if it's just unscrewed, I'm just going to give it a little twist. In through the bottom. And if I corkscrew the lure as I push against the polywire, that's going to come through. I can then just tie a simple reef knot, making sure I don't leave much of an end, a very short end to it. Pull that back, that's going to sit snugly. My lure then is going to go up through my top pedal, into the bottom, it's going to be sat securely in place, like so. Okay. Operation of the stock rod. I release the lure, I hold the rod in my right hand with my index finger on the spool itself. My index finger acts as the brake when I'm unrolling the spool. So I put my finger on and off, adjusting the tension. I can adjust the friction. It means if I drop my lure over a fence, as I walk away, I'll let the wire come out and adjust how quickly that happens with my finger. When I go to reel up, I hold the rod in my left hand, I use my right hand to wind, and actually I can wind that lure right back in by itself, and then snap that closed to finish. So points to note, the device is used to give yourself a huge arm span when working with cattle. The device is live, so be careful that you don't come into contact with the polywire once you put the lure over the fence. And it's best to practice using the rod 2 or 3 times first before using it with cattle. And again, you only ever use it with stock. With cattle that have been trained to respect polywire first before you start to use the stock rod. And be careful where you place yourself and with what classification of cattle you use it with, but used in the right way, it's a phenomenal tool and capable of the work of 2 or 3 men or one very good dog. Much cheaper to keep as well.